Let me start by saying the thing out loud that most money conversations skip right past. Your home is not just an asset. It's the kitchen where every holiday happened. It's the pencil marks on the doorframe climbing up the wall as the kids grew. It's the backyard where the dog is buried and the porch where you've had your coffee for 30 years. It is, in a very real sense, the container that held your whole life. So when the advice arrives, you know, you really should think about selling. It doesn't feel like financial advice. It feels like betrayal, like being asked to erase the proof that any of it happened. I am not going to pretend that away today. I'm not going to tell you it's just a house, because we both know it isn't. But I am going to make you a careful, honest case, the kind you can't get from anyone trying to sell you something. That letting go of the family home might be the single smartest money move of your entire retirement. And more than that done thoughtfully, it isn't an act of loss at all. It can be an act of love and freedom and clear-eyed stewardship of everything you spent a lifetime building. The heart and the head are going to wrestle today, and I promise to be honest with both of them. Stay with me to the end, because I'll also give you the situations where you absolutely should not sell and a reframe that lets you keep every memory while finally letting go of the house. Today, we'll go through the financial case, which is more powerful than most people realize. We'll get to a tax trap that can cost longtime homeowners a fortune, and a tax gift that saves most people one. And then we'll get to the honest other side, the real legitimate reasons to stay right where you are. Because this is not secretly trying to talk everyone into moving. It's trying to help you see clearly. Let's begin where it actually starts, with the heart. I want to honor the hard part first, because if I rush past it, nothing else I say will land. 3 out of 4 older Americans say they want to stay in their current home for as long as they possibly can. That's not stubbornness. That's love and memory and the deep human need for the ground under your feet to stay familiar as everything else changes. The family home is where you feel like yourself. It's where the people you've lost still feel a little bit present. Walking away from it can feel like walking away from them. So take a couple, we'll call them Margaret and Ed, both in their early 70s. They raised 3 kids in a 4-bedroom house on a quarter-acre lot. The kids have been gone for 20 years now. Most of those bedrooms are closed off. Ed doesn't go upstairs much anymore. The knees. The yard that used to be full of bikes and noise now mostly just needs mowing. They rattle around in a house built for a family of 5, 2 of them, and every room is full of ghosts they love. And the thought of selling it feels, to both of them, a little bit like dying. I get it. I want you to know I get it. And now, gently, let's turn on the light and look at the whole situation. Here's the first thing almost nobody says plainly. For most retirees in this country, the family home is not just an asset, it's the biggest asset they own. Bigger than the 401k, bigger than the savings. Right now, older Americans are sitting on a staggering record amount of housing wealth, nearly $15 trillion in home equity among homeowners 62 and up. The typical homeowner 65 and older has about $250,000 of equity locked in their house. Let me explain that word equity simply, because it's the whole ball game. Your equity is the part of the house that's actually yours, what you'd walk away with in cash if you sold it and paid off anything you still owe. For a lot of folks who've owned a long time and paid off the mortgage, that's the entire value of the home, $250,000 or far more. That belongs to you. And here's the cruel catch. It's the one asset you cannot spend. You can't buy groceries with a hallway. You can't pay a medical bill with the den. Someone once described it perfectly. It's like having stacks of $100 bills sealed in a glass case in your living room, and all you can do is walk past and look at them. Margaret and Ed are, on paper, $250,000 wealthier than they feel. They're living inside their fortune, and they can't touch a dollar of it. For a retiree who's worried about money, and most are, that is a genuinely strange and solvable tragedy. Now here's the part that really changes things, because people assume that once the mortgage is paid off, the house is basically free. It isn't. Even fully paid off, a house quietly bills you every single month. There's the property tax, which never goes away and tends to climb. There's the homeowner's insurance, which has been rising fast almost everywhere. There are the utilities, and notice, Margaret and Ed are heating and cooling 4 bedrooms when they use one. And then there's maintenance, the big quiet one. A common rule of thumb is that a house costs somewhere between 1 and 4% of its value every year, just to keep up the roof, the furnace, the water heater, the thousand small things. On a $400,000 home, that can be many thousands of dollars a year. And it only gets worse with age. Roughly two-thirds of baby boomers live in homes that are at least 30 years old, right at the stage where big systems start failing one after another. So add it up. Margaret and Ed aren't living for free. They're paying in money, in time, in worry to maintain a four-bedroom museum of a life that's already moved on. The big empty house has a meter running on it day and night, and they're feeding it out of a fixed income. Now imagine opening the glass case. Margaret and Ed sell the four-bedroom house for, say, $500,000. They buy a comfortable, single-level, low-maintenance place. A smaller house, a townhome, a nice condo, whatever fits, for $250,000, and they pay for it outright. Just like that, they freed up $250,000 that was trapped in the walls. It's now real, usable money, sitting in their accounts. What does that do? If they invest it sensibly, $250,000 can safely throw off around $10,000 a year of income, give or take, for the rest of their lives. Money they simply did not have access to a week earlier. On top of that, their monthly costs drop. Smaller place, smaller tax bill, smaller insurance, almost no maintenance, lower utilities. Here's how the two lives compare, because the difference is bigger than it sounds. In the old house, between property taxes, insurance, utilities for all those empty rooms, and the steady drip of repairs, Margaret and Ed were quietly spending well over $1,000 a month just to keep the place standing and bringing in nothing from their biggest asset. In the new place, those costs roughly cut in half, and that freed up equity is now sending them several $100s a month in income. So the swing isn't just the one cost falling, it's a cost falling and an income rising at the same time every single month. They went from feeding the house to having the house feed them. For a couple who'd been doing nervous math at the kitchen table, that flip changes everything. For a couple who'd been quietly anxious about making the money last, that one decision can be the difference between a tight, careful retirement and a genuinely comfortable one. And remember those many Americans who reach retirement with very little saved? For an enormous number of them, the house is the retirement fund, the only place the real money ever was. Selling it isn't giving something up. It's finally getting to use what they spent a lifetime building. And that idea, not having your entire retirement depend on one thing, is also why some retirees look beyond just their house, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and real estate. One option people often don't realize exists is a gold IRA. Basically, it lets you hold physical gold coins and bars inside a retirement account, with many of the same tax advantages people associate with a traditional IRA. For many Americans over 50, a huge part of their retirement is tied up in the stock market, their home, or both. And when you're no longer working, it's worth understanding what options you have for spreading that risk out. So it's a good idea to at least understand how physical gold could fit into your broader retirement plan. If you want to learn more about how a gold IRA works and how to set one up, there's a free Gold IRA information guide from Augusta Precious Metals that breaks it all down. You can grab it using the link in the description below. It's 100% free, so make sure you check it out. And there's one more piece that doesn't show up in the math but matters enormously. The right-sized home is usually the safer, easier home. No stairs to fall down, no roof to climb up to, no yard you can't physically keep up anymore. Often, it's closer to your kids, or to good health care, or to a community where you're not isolated. Moving from the big family home to a place that fits your body and your life at this stage is a health and safety decision as much as a financial one. And honestly, the home is very often the asset that ends up funding late-life care, which surveys show is the single thing retirees fear paying for most. The house you can't quite manage anymore may be exactly the thing that pays for the help you'll someday need. Now, I promised you a tax trap and a tax gift, and this is where they live. This part saves real money. First, the gift, and it's a generous one. When you sell the home you've actually been living in, the government lets you keep a huge chunk of the profit completely tax-free. A single person can exclude up to $250,000 of gain, a married couple up to $500,000. And let me clear up the biggest misunderstanding right away. Your gain is not the whole sale price. It's the sale price minus what you originally paid, plus every improvement you ever made. the new kitchen, the addition, the roof, the deck. All of that gets added to your starting number and shrinks your taxable gain. Because of that, most ordinary home sellers in this country owe no capital gains tax at all when they sell. The gift is real, and most people get to keep it. But here's the trap, and it's catching more people every year. Those exclusion limits, the 250 and the 500,000, were set back in 1997, and they have never once been adjusted for inflation, even as home values exploded. Back then, the typical American home cost about $127,000, so the exclusion shielded basically everybody. Today, with homes worth many times that, long-time owners in hot markets can sail right past the limit. If that same exclusion had simply kept pace with home prices, it would be over $600,000 for singles and well over $1 million for couples today. Instead, it's frozen, and the gap is the trap. Here's how it bites. Say a married couple bought their home decades ago for $150,000, and it's worth $900,000 today. That's a $750,000 gain. Subtract the $500,000 exclusion, and they owe capital gains tax on the remaining $250,000. A real bill, potentially tens of thousands of dollars. So if you've owned a long time in an area where values soared, plan for this before you sell. Dig out the records of every improvement you ever made. They raise your starting number and directly cut the tax. And know that there's been talk in Washington of changing or eliminating this tax entirely, but it is not law today, so don't build your plan on a maybe. Now I promised you honesty, and that means telling you just as plainly when selling is the wrong move. Because it sometimes is. If staying in your home genuinely makes you happier, and you can comfortably afford it, the taxes, the upkeep, the help you might need to keep it up, then that piece has real value, and no calculation gets to overrule it. A life is not an optimization problem. If the home is where your soul is at rest, that counts, and it counts for a lot. There's also a real tax reason some people are wiser to hold on. It's called stepped-up basis, and it's worth understanding. If you keep the home until you pass away and leave it to your children, the tax law resets the home's value to whatever it's worth on the day you die, which means all that built-up gain, the very thing that would have been taxed if you sold, can be wiped clean for your heirs. They could potentially sell it shortly after and owe little or no capital gains tax at all. So for some families, especially those sitting on a huge gain, holding the home and passing it down is actually the more tax-efficient path than selling it now. That's a genuine trade-off worth running with a professional. And if your real goal is just to get at some of that trapped equity without leaving the home you love, there are tools for that too. A home equity line of credit, or for those 62 and up, a reverse mortgage, which lets you borrow against your equity without monthly payments. I'll be honest and balanced about these. They can help in the right situation, but they carry real costs and fees. They can affect certain benefits, and the loan eventually has to be repaid, usually by your heirs selling the home. Many experts treat them as a careful, last resort tool, not free money. They deserve a careful look, not a quick yes. Finally, don't forget that selling itself isn't free. Real estate commissions, closing costs, and the move can eat into the equity you free up. And uprooting late in life, away from your doctors, your friends, your church, your routines, has its own real cost that won't show up in any calculation. So this was never a command. It's a question, your numbers and your heart run side by side. So let me give you the reframe I promised, the one that I think dissolves the false choice at the center of all this. You are not selling your children's childhood. You couldn't if you tried. Those memories don't live in the drywall or the kitchen tile. They live in you, and they come with you wherever you go. The door frame with the pencil marks is precious, but the love that made those marks isn't for sale and never leaves you. The house was a wonderful tool that served one beautiful season of your life, the raising of a family. And that season is complete. It did its job magnificently. Honoring it doesn't mean clinging to it until it becomes a burden that quietly drains the very freedom you worked your whole life to earn. Think of it this way instead. Letting go of the family home, when the time is right, can be the final loving act of stewardship over everything you built. You take the shelter that protected your family for 40 years and you transform it into security, into income, into the freedom to actually live your last best chapter well. Maybe into help for a grandchild or a softer landing for the people you love. That's not betraying the home. That's letting it finish the job it was always there to do, taking care of your family. Margaret and Ed, in the end, didn't lose their home. They let it give them one last enormous gift. Step back, and you can see something remarkable about this whole generation. Older Americans are sitting on the single largest pool of housing wealth in the history of the country, nearly $15 trillion, and a huge share of it is locked away, untouchable in homes they're often anxious about being able to afford to keep. We have millions of people who feel financially squeezed while quietly living inside a fortune. The family home, for this generation, became the retirement plan almost by accident. And learning to see it clearly, as both a beloved place and a powerful financial tool, has become one of the defining money questions of later life. And the rules quietly shape the choice in ways most people never notice, like that capital gains exclusion, frozen since 1997, slowly turning a tax break into a tax trap for longtime owners. None of this is designed to be obvious, which is exactly why it's worth sitting down before the decision is forced on you by a failing roof or a fall on the stairs, and looking at the whole thing with clear eyes while you still have every option open. So, should you sell the family home? I can't answer that for you, and I wouldn't try. It's your home, your memories, your call, and nobody else's. But here's what I'd ask of you. Don't let the heartbreak make the decision for you before you've truly looked. Don't let the fear of letting go quietly cost you the freedom, the security, and the ease that the home itself could provide. Run the numbers honestly. Sit with your heart just as honestly. And hold on to this one truth through all of it, that releasing the house is not releasing the life you lived inside it. That part is yours forever. Sometimes the smartest money move you'll ever make, and the most loving one, are the very same move. To gently open the glass case, take out the fortune you spent a lifetime building, and finally use it to live. The home gave your family everything it had. There may come a day when the kindest thing you can do, for them and for yourself, is to let it give you one last gift, and walk forward lighter, carrying every memory with you.